We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good afternoon, and welcome to yet another edition of Free Association Radio. This is Robert Phoenix, and I'm back. I was away for a few days, and here I am. I guess the last time we spoke was on Monday, and here we are. Welcome back again. Today should be a really interesting show. My first guest is from what I hear, is quite the jewel and a real individual in truly an American sense. And what you'll hear about her and through her is a slice of American history in an only way, shape, and form that you can kind of experience it in this country. Her name is Bunny Herring, and we'll be talking with her shortly about her book, Still Swinging in Wonderland. And it's about her life as a trapeze artist with the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. And I believe she's 87 years old. So looking forward to talking with her in just a moment or two. And in the second part of the show, at the bottom of the hour here, we're going to be bringing on Ellias Lonsdale. We're going to get into the major action that's taking place in the sky right now. We've got this Star of David, within the Star of David, coming up the 22nd. That's if you use sidereal astrology, by the way. And then we have another Star of David formation coming up with some grand sextiles on the 29th. So we'll get into that with Ellias and more. Ellias is a master astrologer and channel. And he was on the show once before with Richard Grossinger. And if you remember that show, if you listen to it, you'll remember that Ellias was incredibly informative and extremely enlightened in his perspectives when it comes to astrology. So they'll be on at the bottom of the hour. Okay, so let's not waste any more time here. Let's bring on our first guest. Her name is Bunny Herring, and she's the author of Still Swinging in Wonderland. Here she is.
Hi,
hello,
Robert.
There. Hi, Bunny. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Robert. I'm very honored to be on your show.
Well,
especially when you're doing things about the movements of the planets and stars in the universe, that's very beautiful.
Well, you're kind of part of the story, because what you've done for the majority of your life takes place in the air.
Hey, Robert, can I first thing just correct a couple of things you just
Sure.
said?
Absolutely.
Okay, and when I was in Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, I was not a trapeze artist. I was an elephant rider and a bareback rider and a dancer.
Okay.
And then I'm not going to be 87 till October.
Okay, so we don't want to jump ahead of the curve there. You're 86.
Okay, dear.
Yeah, but with all great intention and things being as they will be, you will be celebrating your birthday in October. But you do have trapeze skills.
Well, I did. It's really quite ironical because when I went in the circus, much to my mother and father's objections, I promised, among other things, that I would not do an aerial act. They didn't mind elephants or horses or dancing, but I had to promise them I wouldn't do any aerial act. So here I was at my 80th birthday at City Museum, and Jessica Hentoff, who runs the circus school and who created the acrobatic act of the arches with Circus Flora, Jessica said to me, well, we can't have an elephant or a horse at City Museum, so you have to learn an aerial act. So that's how I happened to start doing an aerial act.
And this was in 1980, Bunny?
1980.
When did you start to do the aerial act? What year was that?
My 80th birthday would have been...
Your 80th birthday, so that was just 6 years ago then.
6 years ago, yeah. And I've done it for 3 or 4 years after that, but I haven't done it for the last 2 years because first I crushed my kneecap doing a clowning act.
Mm-hmm.
At a party, I crushed my kneecap, and then after I got over that, I had to have a hip replacement this year. So now I've been out of commission for a couple of years, but I'm going to gym every day and getting stronger so that I'll be able to do it again, I hope.
That's tremendous. So you went to an all girls boarding school outside of Baltimore, right? And then you went to New York to study ballet?
Yes, to the American School of Ballet. Madison Avenue.
And that's where Ringling Brothers came into your life, right? They came by the studio.
Yes, my roommate and I were in a ballet class, and a very attractive woman came in the middle of class, and she said, I'd like to ask any of the dancers here if they'd like to audition for Ringling Brothers. And Barbara, my roommate, and I were like, oh my gosh, we had no idea you could get into the circus as a dancer. We thought you had to be born into it or, I don't know, have some sort of act to be in the circus.
Right.
In all my imagination, I never dreamed that I could just join the circus as a dancer. So we said we'd like to go to the audition, and we went over on Broadway to this great huge building to the audition, and there were all these glamorous blondes and redheads with long eyelashes and long nails and high heels, and oh my gosh, the competition. We were so, we had brown hair and sneakers and jeans, and we were just so drab compared to all these glamour girls. And Miss Baker had us do a few dance steps, and then she told us to come back the next day. So the next day when we went back, we got a lot of makeup on and curled our hair and put on high heels. And when she saw us like that, she said, that's ridiculous. We wanted you because you look like natural farm girls who would stay with the circus. She said, all these others are New York chorus girls, and they'll go to the training in Sarasota. They'll stay through Madison Square Garden for the month, and then they'll leave the circus. And she said, we want wholesome girls like you all who will stay and not leave right after New York. So that's how it happened. So we signed contracts, and we were so excited and happy, and Barbara told her family first. They were an Ohio, well-to-do farming family. And
Right.
they said, well, that's wonderful. What a great opportunity to travel and meet people from all over the world. And they were very enthusiastic. When I called my family, it was completely the opposite. And I couldn't even say the name Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey without my mother almost fainting.
Yeah.
So my father sent her to New York to get me and told me my contract wasn't binding because I was underage. And
right.
then my mother met some of the circus people, and she understood that they were good people, and she talked my father into letting me stay for, just like the other girls, through New York. And
right.
then I had to promise to go home and make my debut. And so anyway, that's how that all happened. And
you did that for how long? Was that for 3 years?
Yeah, so I was with them 3 years, and I got recruited into a Italian bareback riding act.
Uh-huh.
And I got to be carried in the elephant's mouth. There was only one other girl who got to do that.
Right.
And sometimes when the elephant trainer's little mistress in the center ring was sick, I got to be in the center ring and get to have the elephant lie down on top of me and also come over and put her foot on my face. I got to do those two special things sometimes.
Lucky you.
Yes, I thought I was very lucky, and if Hugo Schmidt were still alive, I would do that in a minute.
I don't know how much you follow the circus now, but I took my son about 4 years ago. He was quite small, and there were a number of animal activists outside of the circus, and they were protesting against the elephants and a number of other animals in the circus. What was your experience like? And again, this is 1946 through 1949. What was your experience like with the elephants and how they treated the elephants, and how do you feel about that issue?
Well, I'll tell you, because there were a lot of animal acts, and particularly I knew the Elephant Act and Hugo the trainer, and I knew personally that training animals, it's a question of respecting the animal and having the animal respect you, and that good trainers never are cruel. They're circus people, their animals are like part of their family. You know, they live with them, they love them, they depend on them for their livelihood. They're very, very close and loving to their animals. And Ringling actually has breeding programs for these animals and, does special things to try to preserve them and keep them alive. And never, ever did I see. There were monkeys, lions and tigers, seals, all kinds of trained animals. And their trainers were always firm, strict, but kind, and treated them well, cared for them, fed them well. I thought it was a wonderful thing how they treated their animals. And believe me, I'm very much of an animal lover. If I'd ever seen any indication they were otherwise, I would have been extremely upset and have taken some action about it, because I feel very, very strongly about animals.
Mm-hmm. Do you still have any formal contact with the circus at all?
No. I'll tell you, there's Circus Flora here in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
The little one-ring circus, wonderful, very artistic, more of a theater piece. And some of the Walendas are here, some of the Zopes. They're like grandchildren of performers I worked with and that are performing here with Circus Flora, and because I was once in the circus, even for 3 years, they treat me like I'm a member of their family. It's very
interesting.
Yeah, it's wonderful, but it's Ringling Brothers. I really have no contact anymore, which is sad.
But you're part of the circus fraternity because you've been in the circus, right? That's what you're saying.
Once you're in the circus, you're considered a part of the family.
Yeah. When I used to be in the restaurant business a long time ago, I waited on tables in my early 20s and a little bit beyond that. And the restaurant business was pretty incestuous. You work with people a lot. You spend a lot of time. You go out with them after work, and invariably there are romances or affairs that spring up as a result of this intense contact with other people. Was the circus like that at all? Did people, get involved with each other because of the kind of the heat of the moment or the intensity of traveling?
The circus is very much it's very much a class separated kind of organization. In other words, performers cannot talk to the workmen, okay? You can't even speak to the roustabouts and workmen. You can speak to the clowns or other performers. You can associate with them. And you can associate with the businessmen. There are a lot of businessmen, with the circus. So there were always great romances between the circus girls and the businessmen, and also, of course, amongst all the performers. Lots of romances. And circus people tend to marry other circus people. A lot of the Christianis, the Wallendas, any of the big circus families are pretty much, I don't mean it's incestuous, but they're pretty much intermarried. And of course, their children grow up and they marry other circus performers. And I don't know, I think circus people must have some of the most wonderful lives because they're doing what they love and they're very healthy and they're making other people happy watching them. And that's all got to be very fulfilling to be doing. They don't make a lot of money, for sure, But
so Bunny, what are clowns like when the makeup is off? I think some people would be interested in that.
What clowns look like when their makeup
is
off?
What are their personas like when the makeup is off? Because
all different people, but often they're. In my book, I talk about this young clown who I was in love with, and he was small and he was a sad face clown, white face with teardrops under his eyes and his mouth turned down. And then when his face was washed clean, he had a very sweet face, quite pale, because he had this heart condition. And often, like Emmett Kelly, he was just sort of a very plain-looking man. Nobody you would look at without the clown makeup. They often were just sort of plain-looking men.
Right.
And usually it's true. It's sort of a romantic notion, but a lot of clowns really had very sad lives.
Really?
Yes. Either some of them had been in trouble before they became clowns, or like in the case of my clown, he had this life-threatening disease. He knew he wasn't going to live to be very old. And so often they look very ordinary, but they often have quite sad lives.
So he was a clown that was portrayed as sad. He was a sad clown. And in his quote-unquote real life without the makeup, he was also living a sad existence because he understood that he wouldn't live very long as well.
Exactly, yeah. But yet he had to act funny. He had to make people laugh. Even though it's sad, he has to make people laugh.
Right.
That's curious, isn't it?
It is. It's quite ironic, and it
is very ironic. It's
some extreme value in the human condition.
I know. And indeed, well, Emmett Kelly was sad too, and he made people laugh a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it works. It's very unique and ironic.
Well, maybe it's a way for them to experience some kind of healing.
Yes, I think it is. To make others laugh and happy, that in turn fulfills you and gives you a certain happiness in your life, right?
Yeah. So you had a romance with this clown.
Yes, I saw him for 2 years. We used to spend time together.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we loved each other, and he wanted me to marry him, but he said he wouldn't ask me to do that because he knew he was going to die. And the last year we were there, he did leave and went home and died.
Wow.
So, I know.
That is sad.
Really?
Well, you sound delightful, Bunny. I'm sure he was happy around you. So that was.
Oh, I think we did have a lot of happiness. And even the last year, the year that I told my family that I promised to stay out of the circus and make my debut, that year, the debut wasn't till fall, and I left the circus like in May or June. And that summer we went out to a dude ranch in Wyoming. It was at this dude ranch, which was near a little, actually old ghost town, former copper mining town.
Right.
Encampment, where I met the cowboy that I was going to marry, and who I did marry and lived with for over 50 years. And the last year I went back to the circus, I'd already met that cowboy, and I told Clem, the clown, about him and that I loved him, and he said that was wonderful, and he was happy I had someone to love, and he said it's best because he said I can't marry you and I'm going to die, and I know you care for me, and so he understood all that.
Well, this sounds like a movie within your life story, just this relationship with Clem the clown.
I know. And then later on, when I was working with prison performing arts, and it was 2 years after my husband had died, and we were doing Shakespeare in the prison, the men's prison, and that's when I met this convict who I subsequently fell in love with and saw once he got out of prison. It's kind of curious because clown, cowboy, convict.
All begin with the letter C.
That's alliteration, the three men I ever loved.
You see, this is why your story, I think, is incredibly unique and very American. I mean, where else would you fall in love with and have relationships with a clown, a cowboy, and a convict? This is utterly American in many ways.
It is very American. It's three things that are strictly American figures, since we have the biggest prison population in the world. Everyone can relate to convicts, I think.
So I want to talk about your prison work in a second, but there's one other romance that you talk about in the book, which is rather rather intriguing and slightly salty. You actually had an affair with a woman back
well,
back in the day, right?
Have you read this book?
Well, I've read parts of it. I just got it. So.
No, well, actually, it wasn't. It was just, like I told in the book, there were these 3 beautiful women, young women, who came on the show during mid-season. They were Jewish. They were beautiful. They had tattoos on their breasts, long numbers tattooed on their breasts. They had been in concentration camps. They had been in the officers' brothel. They were used for sex by officers in these concentration camps. That's why they weren't killed. They were used by officers, and when they'd been liberated and got away and left Germany, and I don't know why they decided to join the circus, but anyway, they told me, they said they never, ever would have anything to do with a man again. That the things those officers had done were so horrifying that they never wanted to have sex with a man again. And so one night, one of them on the train, we slept on these trains, came over to my berth, and she asked me if she could make love to me, and I told her I didn't know how. She said, "That's okay, I'll teach you." And so I did have sex with her, and but that just happened one time. But it was
just one time, huh?
Very, very interesting.
That is fascinating. And then, of course, later on, you found out she was Betty Friedan, and she wrote The Feminine Mystique. No.
Later on, I didn't find out anything more.
No, I'm just messing around. So this is some of the stuff that you can find in Bunny's book. It's a delightful book, and it's called Still Swinging in Wonderland. Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. Now, of course, you're still in recovery. You're getting back in shape here, but
I'm going to the gym all the time, and I've just been to class learning how to. For YMCA literacy training, I've been to a class to learn how to teach people to read. So I'm going to start doing that, teach people to read. And then for prison performing arts, I work at the Juvenile Detention Center, and I teach girls there ballet. And the idea is not that they're going to become ballet dancers, probably, although some of them are really, really talented. The idea is just to teach them to respect their bodies, to be graceful, to hold themselves well, to be strong, proud of themselves. It's all about more interior values than, although learning to move gracefully is, and sit well and walk well. So that's what teaching ballet at detention is all about. And there's some wonderful girls there that could be terrific dancers. I mean, they have just natural grace and ability. It's wonderful. I love those girls.
Well, I know I wish you a speedy recovery in your training and your therapy there, and so you can get back in there and do what you love. It sounds like you're still doing a lot of great work there, Bunny.
Oh, thanks, Robert. I'm so happy to talk to you. And so how do I listen? I just get this site and listen to your program whenever?
Yeah. This program itself will be turned into a podcast shortly after you and I talk.
Okay.
And you can just come back to this link here and listen to it. It's that easy. And your website is actually on the show page, and if people are interested and want to buy a copy of your book, they can go through your website, correct?
Right, that's true.
and it's still.
Robert, also I just wanted to say one more thing. There's a lot of, for people who love animals, there's a lot of animal stories in my book, and also about trips to foreign countries, like riding horseback in Africa and in India. Stories about foreign countries, trips that are interesting, including now that Nelson Mandela, a wonderful trip to South Africa on a train. So just mentioning that there's a lot of other things besides stuff about myself in the book.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, the audience here, the people listening to the show, are they're very good people and always open to learning about new people and new experiences and great stories. And yours is a great one. You're a national treasure, Bunny, and I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, Robert, thank you so much for inviting me.
Okay.
I really appreciate it.
Will you take good care of yourself and get back out there?
Same to you, Robert. Keep up the wonderful work.
Okay. Bye-bye, Bunny.
Bye, Robert.
So that is Bunny Herring, the author of Still Swinging in Wonderland. How cool was that, huh? Man, the clown story. It doesn't get more real than falling in love with a dying clown. I mean, the irony around that is it's kind of mind-blowing. All right, let's take a deep breath because we are going to get into a whole nother realm here. And that realm is the starry realm, the realm of the cosmos. It is the realm of wonder in and of itself, and awe and mystery. And we are in the thick of it right now with the Grand Shrine and a lot of other aspects that are rolling around in and through us. So without further ado, let's bring on our next guest, Mr. Ellias Lonsdale. Hello, Elias.
Hello.
Aloha.
Aloha. Can you hear me?
I can hear you quite well. How about you on your end? Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
It's early there. How are you?
Oh, really good. Really good. I'm weathering these times very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing my best, although it is a little, how do I say, there's some turbulence in the air.
Yeah, lots and lots of turbulence.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Elias, I wanted to, before we get into like what's happening in the skies, I wanted to read something from your website. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. This is a bit of history about you, and I stumbled across this. And I just want to read this. It says, StarGenesisWisdom.com, by the way, is Elias's website. It's a very cool website, and you can sign up for some of Elias's Star Vision Now, Star Talks, and readings and all that stuff. So let me just read this here. Star Genesis has evolved out of a lifelong quest of William Lonsdale. The 1960s gave vivid experiences of an alternative culture that couldn't be held back any longer. As it broke out all over, William rode this wave into breakaway groups on fire with the desperate edge of the times. Astrology soon gave its cosmic coordinates to this wild destiny journey to awaken inside a future world. We were looking for the age of Aquaria. As we pressed toward the new age, we realized we were traveling through the last strands of an old time. Astrology led William deep and far. The deep was into star magic moving under and through my being. The far was into all the spiritual and esoteric movements emerging in the 1970s, hitching to the communes on the West Coast, learning spiritual scientific disciplines in the New York area, and aligning with the evolutionary currents was the path marked by the living spirits. Eventually, Sarah came along. She was hungry for the very material William was immersed in. When William and Sarah joined forces in the Santa Cruz Mountains, it really felt like home. Friends gathered. The star work flourished. We were reviving our spirits and wondering if we could do something much bigger than this. Tragedy would be the test and the doorway. Sarah developed breast cancer and could not shake it. She plunged into a do-or-die self-quickening of facing her karma and freeing her soul. William was with her all the way. After 2 years, the cancer spread. Everybody gathered. Sarah gifted us all with her spirit of regeneration. Her death was not the end. It was a sparkling new beginning. Sarah became Theana through death, with further names and phases to follow. William became Elias. His path now especially involved tuning in with Theana to seed advances in the new star Genesis in every other jeweled facet of our shared path. We were one as never before. The miracles kept on coming. We wrote and published several books. We kept plunging through the void into wherever Spirit needed to take us. Soon it was Luminara who came and insisted she was already with us on the only path she could relate to in this world. Luminara and Elias co-evolved Star Genesis to take off into a universal portal into the future. We had specially aware children to speed us along our accelerated evolutionary way. Together we began to dream an Aquaria vision, and it talks about here with Mark Borax's help and some other folks that this vision is really coming into its own genesis. So Elias, I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about that, because that's a really powerful statement on your website. And I'm wondering if you could somehow articulate, and I know it's a big piece, but articulate what this transition from William to Elias was like for you. Because for some people, they would say from the outside, well, that's a break from reality. This is something perhaps even psychotic. But for you, it was something deeper, something more. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've never been afraid of going crazy, because I don't go crazy. I go sane. My path is always to go sane. So I've never been afraid of going off the deep end. I'm always coming right to the center. But that's a general statement. What happened in that situation was that my being knew something that my little self didn't yet know, which is a common experience. But in this case, my being knew it so well that my little self had to take notice. And what my being said was, well, Sarah's going to die, but she's not really, well, she's going to die really physically, but she's not going to die inwardly. She's going to be reborn as she dies. And if this happens, if this is possible, if this miracle can happen, then the journey we're on will take off into a much greater dimension. And when it did, when the whole thing happened in this amazing, incredible, synchronistic way, then at the moment of death, Sarah was like a supercharged presence of clearing and freeing and opening energies. And she just kept feeding those into me from that moment onward. So in a little while, a few months, I just had to change my name. And by that time, from William Lonsdale to Ellias Lonsdale, and the name was a name from ancient times. And the name basically meant he who voyages beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm still William in some corner of my being. That's that little self, that never quite got it. But the one who's the knower has kind of taken over my life, and he's Elias, and he has carried a different incarnation within this body, with Sarah Theana Vivian Hoti being, she has many names, with her being right in here with me, in it, all the way. She's just at one with me. And then other beings on the inner, those who've died, have joined her, and other beings on the outer, those who live onward in the physical, such as Luminara, have joined me. So there's quite a big gathering now, and we're just doing this work at a whole other level. But it's been, I would say, throughout, such an extraordinary journey that 20 years ago, basically, I was William Lonsdale, and now I'm somebody else, so completely somebody else that I know who I am.
Mm-hmm. Some people in the quote-unquote New Age movement would term your experience perhaps a walk-in experience. Would you call it a walk-in, or is it something different?
No. No, definitely not. No, it's I have a tradition that I come from. It's not a very common or well-known tradition, but it's a tradition that kind of lurks behind all of the Western world. It's like a kind of an esoteric magical tradition. And in that esoteric magical tradition, you can go through these incredible alchemies, these extraordinary transformations and metamorphoses if all factors converge. It's a tricky path because you really have to be ready for it, and it'll put you through every possible ordeal. But my experience is that now everybody collectively is in the same space I've been in for 20 years, and it's a funny feeling. Like everybody I'm encountering is in some way on the territory I've been traveling, and they're dealing with the stuff I've been dealing with in this radical way all these years.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So we're talking about a blending in conjunction with an expanding at the same time?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, definitely.
Let's talk about what's happening now. I sent Julia a link, and it has to do with this Star of David within a Star of David formation that's supposed to be taking place on the 22nd. Luis Vega, who I think is at Sonoma State University, was going fairly deep with this and plotting this out. Did you have a chance to look at that?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, to be honest with you, there's sort of two sides to the picture. On the one side, I want to say that apocalypse is exactly the soul mood of this moment, and all of that material taps an apocalyptic, fiery strand, like a strand right down the middle of our collective soul at this point. Like we're basically in an apocalyptic time. And the whole feel of that is so strong that people who come into awareness of it get very, very fearful, get very visionary, get tripped out in many directions, learn things extremely rapidly, go through changes extremely fast, and essentially it's a current. What that's talking about is that we're in a time, and we are in a very powerful time, where there's a current at work that's so strong, like a water, snake ear, serpentine current, that is just kind of taking us on a journey we would never have imagined we would be compelled to go on, a very deep inner world journey, a sacred magical journey. So in that sense, I totally agree with everything they're talking about. And the specific star patterns of it, and I've been, checking out their numbers and stuff. It's not the way I do star work. It's a very different stream. And I feel I don't want to advocate anything out of historical Judaism and historical Christianity or historical Islam or historical any other religion per se, even though I actually have tremendous connection with those religions and with their sources. So it's not that I feel, judgmental of them or distant from them, but I don't want to take one of those and kind of tease it out into a guideline for everybody, because things are just too complicated and too extraordinary to do it that way. We have to really stay open to streams that haven't even been here before, and answers and expansions that are beyond the scope of the known.
Mm-hmm. I think you bring up a really good point in that as astrologers, myself included, we all have some particular bias, whatever that bias is, and we can use astrology at times to reinforce either the personal or the cultural bias. And it can be a trap sometimes. I mean, we use what we use because these are the tools that we have acquired over the course of a lifetime. But there's also a bias at times and predisposition. And it feels to me like what you're trying to do is to go beyond the personal, to go beyond the bias and beyond the predisposition. Can you talk a little bit about this and what some of the challenges are in working towards that kind of point of view, and yet still using things like symbols, aspects, and alignments in order to locate yourself in that expanded awareness?
I think that the best way to say it is this time of year, 1970, I was first studying astrology. And I was in a commune, an open land commune for a month called Wheeler Ranch in Sonoma County, California. And during that time, I was reading, and just before and just after, I was reading a book by Dean Ridjar called The Astrology of Personality that had just come out in paperback, and I'd just gotten on my journey. And I was reading this book with great avidity, and by far the chapter that jumped out at me like crazy was a chapter about the Sabian symbols, where Ridjar was introducing to a wider public this whole Mark Edmund Jones Sabian symbols stream that's gotten pretty popular since then, but at that point people didn't know that much about it. And I was reading these symbols and these descriptions, and something just said, this is what I've got to get into. This is it right here.
Mm-hmm.
So ever since that moment, and that's a long time ago, it's 43 years ago, I've been the world's greatest student of the degree symbologies, and I've done books about it and many, many things. And what it's done is it's given me a golden thread through, because essentially it's shown me at every stage beyond what I could even think about at the time. And initially I wasn't quite ready for what I was getting into. But it's like this mythic, magical language where everything is imaginative, that what I would love to do is to train people with the stars to use their imagination, to be completely visionary, because that's the part of it that I relate to. I want people who can see through the stars, can feel through the stars, can just connect through the stars in the kind of the original way we did long time ago. That's the part. And so in a way what I've had to do is just sort of accompany myself on a journey where I never knew where I was going, but I knew I was going to get there.
Interesting.
And I knew I would recognize it when I arrived. And it always proved out. So in a sense, Spirit did it all for me, with me, through me. I just kind of was a collaborator, always. I just never felt like this was my thing. It was our thing. And it gradually changed what our really meant. And at this point, it encompasses, a tremendous amount. I feel like this is, the star work is really a key to our future, because we basically have to retune ourselves to a cosmos above, earth below, vertical axis, a kind of cylindrical axis that's kind of coming through our lives and turning us into new earth beings and new heavens beings. And it really requires us to be so present with ourselves. The Christ principle, which I bring in one of our books, the Christ Letters, which we bring in one of our books, the Christ Letters. The Christ principle is you being with yourself. It's not about you worshiping somebody who made a religion. It's about you being utterly at one with who you really are, with the Christ within you. And that's my religion. Not Jesus, but the real cosmic Christ.
Well, let's talk about that in a second, but I don't want to skim over the Sabian symbols for now, because I think it's very important. And if you look at the Sabian symbols, we have the first iteration of the Sabian symbols through L.C. Wheeler and Mark Edmund Jones. People who listen to the show know that I've talked about them for quite a bit. I reference them quite a bit, but when I reference them in my blog, I'm using Rudyard's interpretation of the Sabian symbol. So we start with Edmund Jones and L.C. Wheeler, and then Rudyard comes along and he does this incredible kind of paradigm, gates within gates, and adding his own sort of experience at that time with theosophy as well, and what he would call the brotherhood. That comes through that version of the Sabian symbols quite a bit. So we've got that. And my good friend Linda Hill has her own interpretation of the Sabian symbols, which is, I think, probably a little more humanistic in some ways. And then you have your own, but what you do is something very different. You create the Chandra symbols, which is a kind of a Blakean remix of the Sabian symbols to some extent. Can you talk a little bit about what you did with the Chandra symbols and how you, because people who have read, it's a hard book to find. I don't have a copy, but people who have read the Chandra symbols absolutely love it, and they love your interpretation of the various degrees. Can you talk a little bit about that and your process around that?
Yeah. First of all, what happened was that for about 14 years, is that right? For 14 years after that point I mentioned, I became an ardent student of the Sabian symbols, and I did everything I possibly could with them. And then in the mid-'80s, out came John Sambach's book on the Chandra symbols, his kind of simple rendition of them. And I found that book, and it just spoke to me. So I started soon interpreting the Chandra symbols even more so than the Sabian symbols, because they were more sort of directly magical. And eventually, a very interesting thing happened with John Sambach, which is he started in this century, back, so we're going forward 15, 16, 17 years. He started in 2000s doing another set of degree symbols called the Omega symbols. And then he even more recently put on his website, I'm not sure of the current status of whether it's on the website or I think it's becoming a Kindle book. But anyway, he has brought out new interpretations of the Sabian symbols, new symbols for them that are related but different, and the same for one other set. And he's basically gone into the degrees way far. And then I'm going further also. It's like a sort of a perpetual dance of exploration of these degrees. And I'd say the Sabian symbols are kind of structurally sound, and they're good. And then the Chandra symbols and other things that John's working on are more in a vein of direct psychic experience, where he's actually directly tuning into beings and forces at work behind that degree. And so it comes out more like a vivid script, like a direct emanation of beings and worlds. It's more Neoplatonic, really. And to me, all of it is good and all of it's useful. And I need my imagination to be touched, because intellect doesn't interest me. So I have to do everything by imagination.
So the Sabian symbols themselves are almost like a cosmic cathedral that keeps evolving with the next generation sort of working on its various facets. Is that kind of an apt metaphor?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's talk about the number 9 in terms of let's use the Chandra symbols for instance. And I'd like to, if you can work this out in real time. We're coming up here on a very powerful opposition between Mars and Capricorn at 9 degrees, and it hasn't happened since the French Revolution, the 18th century. We haven't had this exact opposition between Mars and Pluto in Cancer Capricorn. I think it's at 9/26. What do you make of that? And can you somehow convert these two numbers, 9 for Capricorn and 9 for Cancer? Can you convert those into a Chandra equation so we can maybe work this out in real time?
Yeah. In the way I do the degrees, if it's 9 plus, then it's 10. So we're talking about 10 Capricorn, 10 Cancer, and using it that way. We have a book called Star Sparks that's coming out either the end of this year or early next year. And we do the Chandra symbols again, and we do them much more fully. And some people have had access to that material for a while and have really liked it. And so we're putting out sort of the real full-on version of that. And if you consult 10 degrees Capricorn, where Pluto is, the degree symbol is a man drinking blood from the vein in a horse's leg. This is the Chandra symbol. A man drinking blood from the vein in a horse's leg. And I'll just read you the first 3 or 4 lines of our description of that. Seeing something you never could see before. Being alerted to all the missing parts. Being pervasively shown what is lacking, what is wrong with this picture. Gaining the strength and vitality to be able to withstand the shock of no illusions, no protective veils, nothing but what shows up to be met on its own terms. So that's the Plutonian stream of our times. We're all in a kind of vampire world right now where we have to draw upon any inner strength we can find to give us this deep, powerful, not only staying with it, but moving through it and beyond. That's what Pluto is all about these days, because Pluto's been in that degree for a little while here, a few days. Mm-hmm. And if you take then Cancer 10, which is the more brief, immediate Mars position, although this degree has come up a lot too. So picture this for a Mars. Cancer 10, a violent hailstorm. A violent hailstorm. What we are up against the most nowadays is the feedback loop which all of existence gives us, reflecting where we have been and where we have not been. It is a lacerating experience to come sharply up against the gaps, the missing places. We try everything to throw off this reckoning, but the harder we try, the closer it gets. We must pass through. we must pass through an ordeal. Okay, so Mars is giving us this kind of violent shakeup at the same time that Pluto is holding this space of you've got to go through these things, you've got to take them all the way through. So the optimal use of that moment would be to voluntarily take yourself through a change that enabled you to restore something missing, and in effect take whatever intense vibrations you're dealing with as furthering the change rather than as something to avoid, even if it's very intense.
Wow.
That's an example.
Wow. So we have this occurring on an individual level, and we also have this occurring on a collective level as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Interesting. What about the Grand Trine, which is beginning to subside a little bit as the planets move away from each other? But the Grand Trine, we've been activated in it for about the past 10 days now, almost 2 weeks. What's your experience been like with this Grand Trine, just for you personally?
This month of July of 2013 has been for me a key month of my life. And what I've experienced with that Grand Trine is that there's this extraordinary movement through and forward if I am willing to surrender. In the water element, you have to surrender. You have to give over. You have to be willing to just embrace whatever is, all of it together. And every time I do that, I find that things deepen and strengthen. And contrary-wise, every time I don't do that, there's also momentum the other way. What happens with Grand Trine is there's tremendous momentum, but it's momentum that goes whichever way you want to go with it. So there's also a momentum that takes us back into these karmic circuits to play them out and work them out again. And with Mercury retrograde till tomorrow, basically that's the the path most people have been taking. And at this point, when Mercury goes direct, you can re-grasp that, and you can take that around again. You can basically say, well, it's been almost impossible to get to this point, but I can take a curve here, take an edge here, and move further into and through things and not be afraid.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I reconnected with you via Mercury retrograde, and on Facebook they have this tab where you have messages from people, and then there's another little tab called Other. And it's one of those tabs that a lot of people don't know about on Facebook. And so every now and then it's like you click the Other, and these are messages that come to you from people that are not your Facebook friends. So I clicked on that, and that's where I got Julia's message to connect with you, and she sent that back in April, actually. So it was kind of a fitting exercise to go in there and then kind of, resurrect our connection via Mercury retrograde. And people say, well, astrology is a bunch of, horse crap. But when you have these experiences over and over again to confirm what's taking place, it's anything but. So I was glad I was able to do that, reconnect with you during Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, I particularly liked the last moment of it, because what happens here is that Mercury is pondering that it's about to go direct in 14 Cancer, 13 plus, and that Mercury is, in a sense, able to make almost any move you would want to make at this moment. So the move I decided to make into this particular session with you was to put out there a strong message, a strong signal, because part of what I got from the Star of David stuff was that people really are at an end of the world kind of tether, many people, and we need a kind of support and a sustainment and a renewal, and so that's what I'm trying to bring through.
Yeah, that's good stuff. We went through Jupiter and Gemini recently, incredible trickster energy, incredible duality, incredible fractals and mirrors and realities within realities, identities within identities. And for a lot of people, it could be a very frustrating time in terms of sorting through information and experience as it relates to Jupiter and Gemini. But now we're in Jupiter and Cancer, and it's a very different feel. It's a very different modality. Can you talk a little bit about what your experience with Jupiter in Cancer is, and what we can expect from it in terms of in some ways, and this is my feeling about it, a force of redemption?
Well, traditionally in astrology, Jupiter is considered to be exalted in the sign of Cancer, which means that it's at its highest, clearest expression in the sign of Cancer. And traditionally in astrology, Jupiter in Gemini is not considered to be a very favorable position. And I'm not very medieval in my approach, but I'll just mention that. And I would say that Jupiter in Cancer so far, since late in June, has, so basically the last 3 weeks here, last 3 weeks, it's, to me, it's like a breath of cosmic fresh air. Mm-hmm. And it's like a kind of a touching into a unitive, integrative field and a moving with what's possible. And I feel like there's a lot of people who've suddenly caught a second wind or are beginning to. And Jupiter in Cancer can put wind back in your sails, because it makes you feel that, and it actually is reality. It's not just feeling that you are in a progressive situation, and that moves that you make and things that you think and do really do count and add up. And I would say a current that's been very strong in my world the last few weeks is, if we want to change the world, let's do that. If we want to enter a new phase, let's do that. It's a moment to kind of catch the edge of possibility for those who are willing to go that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's been working in concert here with Saturn and Scorpio, in its early manifestations, Jupiter in Cancer. And that's an interesting dance with Saturn and Scorpio. I've been sitting back and watching from a collective level Saturn and Scorpio at work, and and having it reveal the audacity of the IRS and money collecting and a number of other things. But it feels to me like there's, at least in the last week or two, some real powerful catalyzing and healing energy where Saturn and Scorpio comes in and compresses, and it shows where the darkness is. People are now, if you go onto the internet, you'll find, especially on Facebook, you'll find this talk about people being exposed. And we have that on one level. Then we have this Jupiter and Cancer energy coming in from another angle and expanding and maybe bringing some redemption and some healing balm to what we're going through. So I guess my question for you here, Ellias, is Saturn and Scorpio. It's an interesting energy. It's an interesting time in terms of exposition and transformation. What's your internal take on this?
Yeah, well, let's look into Saturn and Scorpio. Saturn just right on the new moon a couple of weeks ago went direct right at that time. Mm-hmm. And the Chandra symbol of the degree that Saturn's in is an Egyptian queen with a braided beard. And I'll just read the first sentence, which is going under and staying under. And what I would say is that Saturn has been in maximum what I would call Akashic mode. Akashic mode means when something reveals past karmas. Although Saturn Scorpio revealing past karmas, almost all of it to most people most of the time is unconscious, which doesn't mean it's weaker, it's actually stronger. But most people don't know what's happening. They just find themselves playing out trances and enchantments from the past, doing things as they've done them before, only this time kind of observing it and realizing that it's over. So there's a lot of people finding their past selves and past worlds are over, are not even current at all, and they have to make this leap, this deep leap, it's a Scorpio leap, to where you can remember the other side of things. The Egyptian queen with a braided beard is Nefertiti. She represents the divine androgyny. And there is a way in which we have to go to the other side of what we're experiencing, encompass that, and come back around and find where we really are. You have to find yourself through others, find yourself through significant mythologies around you, and then do the work inside to take it further. But everything sort of comes forcefully from every side.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting symbol because we can look just recently. I'd have to track it to the new moon. I'm not sure how far off the new moon it was, but we had a revolution, another revolution in Egypt, as it relates to that symbol with Saturn and Scorpio. And it's the first time, because if you look back and when Egypt has adopted a new constitution or had a new form of government, Saturn has been in Libra through, I think, the last 4 iterations. But they broke with their Saturn and Libra pattern, and this revolution and this new government, whatever it will manifest as, took place with Saturn and Scorpio. It's interesting, especially as it relates to your symbol.
Yeah. I've had, I'm going to put it in esoteric terms, I've had this kind of deep Egyptian feel to my life of late. I have this degree in my chart, and I've had this just deep Egyptian feel to my life where I sense that, any lifetimes lived in the Middle East, which of course are many for everybody, they're with me now, and everything that goes on in the Middle East, it feels like it's going on within me. It's very hard to distance. This is not just for me, but for everybody. It's hard to distance from events in the Middle East. Just like if things happen in New York City, Americans are more responsive to them than anywhere else. By the same token, The Middle East is the world's New York City. It's the world's nexus. And we've had so many lives there, and so many key, incredible, intense lives there. And so when things go on there that are as radical as what's going on there now, we may not realize it because Scorpio keeps things under, but we are going through what the Egyptian people are going through. We're racked by the same divisions. We are trying to find our way through from, between Islam and, let's call it, contemporary society. Where does the balance come?
Mm-hmm.
And that, people could say, well, Islam doesn't mean anything to me. If you could penetrate your soul to the Islamic one in you, everybody's got a Muslim in them or Sufi, you'd find that this means everything to you. So I'm saying that everything that goes on in the collective these days is happening inside of us. And if we can check that out and discover where that's taking us, we'll understand a lot about ourselves and about the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds absolutely plausible and quite clear. But there's a challenge in that too, though, Ellias, in that there are people. You obviously have made this an art over a lifetime. You've evolved, you've deepened, you've expanded, and you are really okay with being in the deep end. But there are people in the world who may not necessarily have the time or the capacity or the awareness to be able to do that. And so it, I guess, falls on the shoulders of the people that can in some ways. Can you talk about this disparity in terms of consciousness in seeing the world and being in it?
I'm glad you asked me that, because something just happened to me today when I was preparing this session extensively. I realized that what the next level of my work is going to be, not this fall, but next year, next level after what's been set up already. And I realized that I was going to have to start teaching people how to free themselves of karma in a very deep and big way. Because the way I'm perceiving it is that the thing that makes somebody not quite be able to be at home in the deepest part of their experience is really that they have karmic obstacles. And karmic obstacles, just to clarify, are not always individual past life karmic obstacles. The most common karmas have nothing to do with that, although that is certainly part of it. The most common karmas are collective karmas, being part of a certain culture and time and place, and polarity karmas, being identified with a gender or a religion or just about anything that's opposed to something else very different from it, and also ancestral karmas, where what we came into in our early life affects us tremendously, and that's a karma too. So I'm not just talking about traditional karma of past lives, but all these different karmas are what's plaguing people. Basically, they're caught in structures that are outmoded. And I realized that I could teach them this because this is the path that I had to take. I had a lot of karma to deal with, and I had to deal with it at a very intense level over an extended period of time. And I think I've learned something. And the one thing I'll say about that, just in general, is the reason that we make things so hard for ourselves is that our ego identifies with karmic structures, which means that we start to believe that I am the person of this color skin, I am the person of this religion, I am the person of this lifetime who is strictly male or female, this kind of thing. And we get sort of locked into a role and a pattern and a syndrome, and we don't realize that we're just a fluid center of a multidimensional life force that is currently taking this form. And we need to deconstruct our sense of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it's about. And yes, there is a disparity, a gap. People who have been trained in the mystery schools in other times and places have this instinct for how to get through these times, and many, many people don't have that instinct. What they do have is they have other tools that they can use, but the instinct makes a huge difference, and that's actually how I would describe it. I don't do anything by anything other than instinct. I just operate by instinct, but it's a very schooled instinct.
Right.
I think you know what I mean. If you work with the stars, you have to work with kind of like a star instinct.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, for sure. What you're positing is interesting and ironic because, again, it sounds like to the outsider to allow this kind of reality to emerge in the individual and to be really kind of non-local and to just go with this more archetypal or collective, not a collective, but an archetypal and a cosmic energy to have a role in one's life. Again, for many people, that would look like madness or chaos. And yet, if you look at the world in and of itself, what are we seeing for the most part anyway? We're seeing madness. We're seeing chaos. This is what, if you're really kind of, turned on and aware, this is what's going on around the world. So perhaps what your positioning is not so mad or insane at all, and is really the path towards some resolution and sanity.
A few years back, I still felt that we needed reasonable solutions to reasonable problems, but I've realized that everything's happening under the inside. I have 4 small children, and I'm in their world with them. And, of course, children are more this way than grown-ups anyway. But I watch what it means to be under the inside, to be really embedded in reality rather than abstractly removed from it. And there is something happening where we're all becoming as children, and we're starting all over in the age of Aquaria, and we have to learn how to shed particularly this ego-mind structure of keeping things rational and keeping things under control and under wraps. We're going to have to learn that we are not in control, and we're not supposed to be in control.
Mm-hmm. That is a major reorientation.
Yes, it is.
Because the reflex reaction is the world is chaos, the world is danger, we are in apocalyptic mode, so we need more control. I need more control. I need to get, more supplies, or I need to get more bullets, or whatever those things are, right? I mean, this is how, or I need to get a better 401k, or I need to make sure that my bank is solvent and, not going to take my money. All the measures
all
that
of the things
take.
But
right?
Realize that all of those behaviors are programmed in.
Right.
And so, yes, the masculine is programmed. The masculine in all of us, including women and girls, the masculine is programmed to do exactly that. That when things get tough, press this button, press that button, do this, do that. It's all programmed in. I understand that. But the truth is that if you want to become who you are and go forward in life in a time when the collective is going backward right now,
mm-hmm.
you have to really buck the trend, and specifically the trend to fear the unknown and to avoid that which you can't control and manipulate. We've got to get this, because essentially we will keep destroying the earth if we believe we've got to stay on top of things all the time.
Right. And the ultimate staying on top of things is revealed in things like the NSA and massive spying and surveillance. I mean, I think this is an incredible symbol for our time as it relates to control.
Yeah, I've been following that pretty closely, and I feel that what this thing about secrets is, you're talking about Saturn in Scorpio, which is a dominant force in our times, and Moon Node in Scorpio, sending Moon Node. What we have here with the secrecy thing is anything that would keep the world stuck in the past, which is the whole world system that we're under, has to operate under stealth, because if anybody knew what it was doing, they would want to stop it. So everything is secretive. And when Saturn Scorpio starts to expose this many secrets this fast, what happens is, on the one hand, the negative side, people get very, very caught in it. They get kind of fearful. They get, stuck in ruts with it, of course. But the other side of it, it's a very transformational influence. The other side of it is you can always find a way to discover that you are Barack Obama, and that you are the Republican Party, and that you are all the people who deny that there's climate change and all the rest of it. And you are giving them power, and that if you no longer operate that way, that's what will help, not plugging into CNN and knowing what's happening or something, or any other variant, but actually taking up the world changes, because that's the challenge of these times. We have to do what Snowden did, take things into our own hands, because if you don't, you're always going to be the victim.
Yeah, we agree there too. You're living in Hawaii, and I think the last time we talked with Richard, I think it was about a week before Fukushima happened. Is that right?
I was wondering exactly when that was. I got the general time, but I couldn't remember the exact time. Yes.
It was about a week before Fukushima happened, and I think we're 2 years into that event now, and it has not abated. In fact, based on hard work, good work of a lot of people, especially Radchik, who's been on the show before, it's being shown that Fukushima is bleeding worse than ever. And you're in Hawaii, and you're in the path of this, and this is the part of the apocalyptic scenario that we're living with. How are you dealing with that on a personal level, and how are you dealing with it on a cosmic level?
Okay, first to give the devil his due, so to speak, I'm living in the Big Island. At that point, I was living in Kauai, but I'm now living in the Big Island, and I'm living in the corner of the Big Island called Puna, which is where sort of the center of the active volcano. It's not literally right next door, but we're in the field of the active volcano here. So we have volcanoes, we have tsunami alerts, we have all kinds of possibilities, other volcanoes that may go off, and meanwhile, yes, Japan sending us some World War II revenge material. I mean, not literally, but that's how it comes through, because in Hawaii there's such a strong thing with Pearl Harbor in World War II. And so basically it feels like we're under onslaught here. But I think that in the mainland there's the same thing in different forms. Each place feels under onslaught, just its own particular kind. Ours is pretty dramatic, but the interesting thing here is because of Pele, because of the volcano, what happens with volcanic energy is it keeps renewing things, it keeps changing things, it keeps destroying and creating. And so you learn this Plutonian rhythm living here. This is why I'm here. You learn this Plutonian rhythm of how to go deep enough and far enough into and through things that you're not just directly at their mercy. So you just have to learn these strategies and techniques, and I think we can apply them wherever we go in the world after this. But my feeling overall is that everybody's going to have to deal with both sides of the earth changes, the side of the endings that everybody's focused on, also the side of new beginnings that people have yet to really encompass, that a different earth is coming into being, and that's a whole huge subject.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Neil Kramer's work in The Expanding Earth? Have you looked into this at all?
No, I haven't.
That the Earth is actually growing, and growing at a fairly noticeable rate. And part of the expansion of the Earth itself is one of the reasons why we're having some of these marked Earth changes, with Popocatépetl now blowing down in Mexico, and a lot of the earthquakes and the Ring of Fire that we've been experiencing over the last 5 to 6 years. So it's an interesting theory. In fact, Neil Kramer will be on the show next Friday, and we'll get into this and this whole notion of the expanding Earth and what that means for us. I wanted to talk about your book. It's the Christ Papers. Is that right?
Christ Letters.
The Christ Letters. Let's talk a little bit about that. It's an evolutionary guide home How did this come about? I believe it's your latest book, isn't it? This came out in 2012?
Yes, this was in December of 2012. What's happening with that book is that during the first years after the triple death, which is what we call Sarah's death, that you were asking me about early on in the show, that happened in 1993, and throughout the 93 to 99 time, every Easter and Christmas, I would tune into Sarah Theana, and she would write these special letters that we eventually called the Christ letters, where she would describe her experience with Christ after death and her revisioning of Christianity to accord with the future. And so eventually we just put out this book in December after some extensive revisions with the help of Shastara, our co-publisher, editor, everythinger person. And when we got into that, what I found was that the Christ letters was so much more than relevant. It was practically the handbook of our times. It's just that some people have a background with outer Christianity that's particularly difficult. And as soon as they hear the name Christ, they kind of run for the hills. And so we have always this interesting edge with it where we're talking about Christ in a way that is perfect for people who aren't into outer Christianity, but they have to kind of get through the language barrier. And so that's there. But the material itself is extremely profound, and it's evolutionary. It's about all of us.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything that you have on tap with the Christ letters that the Christ papers? Do you think that do you have anything on tap that you would be able to share with us that might be meaningful or resonant?
Yes, let me just ask you, how long are we going to be speaking?
We can speak for another half an hour. If you have to go,
Good. No, I don't have to go. Okay, let me get this. It'll be like 15 seconds.
Okay. All right. So let me just remind people that we're talking with Ellias Lonsdale, and he is talking with us live from Hawaii, Kona, Hawaii, and he's grabbing a copy of his latest book. It's a channeled piece.
Okay, here we are.
Christ letters.
So I'm just going to open this at random. That's what I do. I work with oracles all the time, rather than giving you a prepared thing. So whatever the book wants to have revealed, it will.
Okay.
This is page 98, upper part. I'll read you a paragraph that just came to me here. If we narrow the focus of our attention and slow down to where we can feel the entering and exiting points of our breath, it is possible to merge with the pulse of our physical and etheric bodies, the revitalizing internal stream. What we will discover is that we are synchronized with universal cosmic and earthly forces, both of which come together in the body. Instead of drawing all of our energy outward for the purpose of squeezing it into fast time, we can now work with the natural rhythm of the body pulse, which fluently fully establishes itself inside before it ventures outside. Such a pulse is rarely tapped because it creates tremendous spaces for an expanded awareness that allows other people and beings to move into us. Ironically, the primary and relentless priority of most cultures is to push people out and keep them out. Yes, that's part of a whole context, but that'll give you a feeling for the way the writing comes through.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's fairly synchronistic in terms of what we've just been talking about too, in terms of how to work with the evolution of the time that we're in, which is interesting. You know, some people say that, well, this is all just an illusion. This is all just Maya. And I always felt like that was really just kind of an easy sort of knockoff or a rejoinder, kind of almost a spiritual sarcasm in some ways. But people are quite, they're quite clear about that this is just Maya. How does all of this get fleshed out in terms of your work and astrology? And if it's all just Maya, what does it matter anyway? I mean, this is really I think the the ironic part of existence in general. What's your feeling about that?
In the early 1970s, when I was first getting into astrology, I was also getting into things from India of many kinds, and they all agreed about the Maya, except for Sri Aurobindo, who in Oroville, and he was basically saying, well, if it's Maya, then you're saying that this whole world is a mistake and an accident and not necessary. And even though he was part Hindu and part Western, he was raised in the West, and he was very, very much from India, he basically said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to get this, that this world is exactly where it's happening. It's just that it hasn't happened yet. His whole point of view, and this is how I started out with spirituality, was that the evolution, the change, the new movement hasn't happened yet, but it is about to, and we need to prepare for that. And that it won't do us any good to keep talking about how illusory and limited this world is, because it's only as limited and illusory as we've made it, and we can enter a state, which he called the descent of the superconscious or the superconscious, where basically we will be of a new species, of a new reality. And from that place, we can talk about what's real and what's not real. But we don't even know, because we're such transitional beings, as he said. Mm-hmm. So that's my metamorphosis of the path of India and its emphasis on Maya. I would say it's been pretty illusory around here, but couldn't we dedicate ourselves to co-creating a path of truth and reality, and then we might discover that this world's the perfect place for that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Aurobindo was a really interesting character. He had an impact on a number of lives, including the mother and Satprem, and out of that, Michael Murphy really got into his work around the body and the human body as it relates to kind of a spiritual network for transformation. Can you talk a little bit about Aurobindo in general?
Yeah, what I love so much about, I read his epic poem Savitri out loud twice in the early days, 750 pages, incredible epic poem. I was really into his poetry, his creativity, his eloquence of a particular kind. And what I love so much about him was that he could invoke the whole Western world in all of its aspects with supreme dispassion. He wasn't hooked on any of it, but he sort of appreciated it and honored it. And then he could take that and take that further, and then he could fuse it with the world of India, which was the world of transcendence and of boundlessness and of so many things being about wholeness and unity. And so he could take both of those worlds and kind of fuse them into a new evolutionary vision, which he didn't just have as a philosopher or something. He was basically the greatest yogi of the 20th century, and his yoga was a yoga of complete transformation of the species. So it was the ultimate evolutionary shifting power, and we haven't quite yet grown up into it yet. We're not quite ready for him yet, but we're getting there fast. He's always way ahead of us.
Yeah, I was always struck by how flexible, facile, and kind of integrative he was with the Western mind. Whenever I read his stuff, it was very lucid and very clear, and in a lot of ways non-judgmental too. Where sometimes you would get a lot of judgment coming from other teachers of that time.
Yes, he doesn't take any sectarian point of view. He doesn't really take the point of view of a Hindu. To him, there's a new religion that encompasses all religions that he's part of, and he just happens to be in India.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's talk about some of your teleseminars and classes and things that you do. How does that work, and what do you do, and how can people tap into that if they want to?
Yes. Okay. First of all, what happened with that was that I wasn't doing anything like that till 2008 for years and years, because I was raising small children or co-raising small children, and also being in Hawaii, which is such a full-on experience. And And then through Mark Barks and others, I started to get into teaching teleclasses. And then right when I last talked to you, I did the last of that series right after that, of that sequence. And then didn't do anything like that for a while. But then in September of 2012, my entire life shifted. A new guiding force came into our, inner world. Someone I knew who had died, who was now back with us in a very big way. And we were scheduled to do these teleclasses, and we started them, and they proved to be really powerful. And then there was another set that was really powerful, and another set that was really powerful. And we're going to do the fourth set, the most star-oriented of all, called Star Activation, starting in the middle of September. And all the information's on the website. I hope it's there by now. And that class is going to be a master course. That's going to be the full-on version of this innovative approach that I've taken, which we call life activation or star activation, where we do the regular zodiac but in a completely new way, and the regular chart but in a completely new way that came through early last year. So these classes are very powerful, and there'll be more such classes next year. And I also do a once a month looking at the stars, and on August 6th there'll be one of those called Star Vision Now, and that people can sign up for that right away, and that's coming soon. Mm-hmm. We did the one in early July, and people loved it, really loved it. We're just keeping track of what's happening and where we all are. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of information on the website too, and I do want to mention that the Christ Letters and the Book of Theana, these two books that we've put out in recent years, are two pivotal books, and those are something to look into for sure. But I'd say the very best way to experience what I do is to have an individual star reading, because I do things so differently. And people experience that I can go into infinite depth, infinite heights, infinite breadth. There's no limit to it. So that also I do, and I guess I could just mention these two phone numbers that are, besides the website, that people can get in touch with me directly if they wish to. I have a voicemail in California, which is 831-425-3134. And then there's a local number here that I'm, at all the time. Mm-hmm. And at this moment, I always forget what the number is. I have it's, 808-965-8285. 965-8285. 808. So that's some of the info, but I have a feeling there's some further explorations we need to be doing together during this time, Robert. So what do you sense?
Yeah, sure. We can definitely do some more further explorations. You mean right now in this time for the last 22 minutes? Okay.
Yes.
Well, one of the things I wanted to just share with you, since we're living in a multidimensional and multimedia medium, I was just, while you were talking, I was just in the chat room, and somebody in the chat room had just said that they just gone online to Amazon. They just bought a Kindle version of the Christ Letters. So I'm just giving you some real-time feedback. And the reason why they did that was because you read it, and I was wondering if you had ever thought about doing an audio version of the Christ Letters.
Yes, we're actually starting a new project within the week where I have a lot of letters that haven't been put into books, and I want to start by reading those to people where they can purchase listening to those for nominal fee, and I think we should probably do that with all of our books too. It's especially because it's very difficult to read them the way they're written, because they're written in a different code. You have to kind of hear it.
Yeah. Well, it was. they picked up on the code well enough because they decided they wanted to go deeper with it. So there you go. There's some feedback. Yeah. I wanted to just also kind of focus in. We've got about 20 minutes left. I wanted to focus in a little bit on the future here and get into November. I think the first week of November, in terms of linear time, is a very interesting and potentially profound time. We're going to have a hybrid eclipse in the first week of November. We're also going to see the second square between Uranus and Pluto in the first week of November. We're also in another Mercury retrograde during that period. And then we've got this interesting interloper, Comet Ison, coming into view right around that time. Have you cast your gaze upon this first week of November, Elias?
Yes, besides what you mentioned, Jupiter goes retrograde a week into November in 21 Cancer, and Neptune goes direct mid-November in 3 degrees of Pisces, just after Mercury goes direct in 3 degrees of Scorpio. Mm-hmm. So they amplify each other, and there's the first half of November is quite a time.
Yeah.
But what I'll mention in particular, what interests me the most is the Uranus-Pluto square, which is at the beginning of November, the very beginning. It's in 10 degrees Capricorn, 10 degrees Aries. I already read to everybody the symbol and a tiny bit of the description of 10 Capricorn because Pluto's there already, but Uranus is not. Uranus is in 13 Aries, and by that time, and just went retrograde, and by that time it will be in 10 Aries. So I want to sort of bring that image and description. So where Uranus will be is roots of a tree entwined around the statue of a nude woman. Roots of a tree entwined around the statue of a nude woman. And this is written in first person. I'll read the first lines. I am bound by vows to take my stand here. My wandering days are over, for I am meant to bear witness, to balance the equation, to reveal what only shows itself to me and stay within the focus of the mysteries. It's a degree of intensification of inner awareness and awakening. Mm-hmm. That juxtaposed to the Pluto intense 10 Capricorn world that we're so in these days. And I would say that, that as the heralding of the rest of the first half of November, we're going to be in a wake-up call time with a lot of the other key aspects, such as Jupiter going retrograde in 21 Cancer, being strongly that way. It could be a tremendous opening and quickening experience. The degree that Jupiter is in when it goes retrograde 21 Cancer is high upon a mountain, an eagle's nest, high upon a mountain, an eagle's nest. And the first sentences are, being shown by spirit forces everything we need to see, being guided from beyond to awaken into the total design. So there's really a tremendous emphasis on a kind of higher awakening and a vaster possibility opening up. I would say it's one of the 7 gateways to the age of Aquaria. The way I like to talk about it is that every one of the 7 Uranus-Pluto squares from mid-2012 to March of 2015, that every one of them is pivotal, and they're sort of steering us, guiding us from one world into another, the end of the age of the fishes to the beginning of the age of Aquaria. And the one that's in November is actually the 4th of 7. So it may be the pivotal turning point of all of them. And I would say that given all the other aspects that are happening at that point, we may be in a decisive movement toward the future.
That's my feeling as well. And I've been getting a real sense of reckoning for that time, and not in it necessarily a bad way, but it's almost like you're sitting at a table, and it's a big hand, and there's a lot of money in the middle of the table, and people begin to lay their cards down. And that's kind of what I'm feeling like for that part of November. There's going to be a lot more for people to see and witness, and to make decisions based on what they're seeing and witnessing at that time. At least that's what it feels like.
Yes, yeah. We all need to kind of get that the planetary crisis is our own responsibility, our own opportunity, our own challenge, and that essentially there's no world out there except the world that we are able to imagine and conceive and co-create. It sounds very New Agey when I say that, but what I really mean is that nothing's real to people in their own experience if it hasn't come somewhere, somehow from inside of them. So we have to learn how to create or co-create the world to be new and real and true. And to me, that really is the path of our times.
Right. Let's just talk quickly about how people can do that on an individual level, tapping into their chart, and even on a very mundane level, their star sign, their sun sign. How does a Virgo do it? How does a Cancer do it? How does an Aquarius do it? How do we find our own unique authenticity within all these different layers and all these different folds, using the basic stuff of our chart? Sun sign, moon sign, Mercury, Venus, the whole 9 yards. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay. When I do a reading these days, what I discover, and there's a lot of them, what I discover is that the person in front of me is needing me to sort of just narrow them down to what's most essential and vital, because there's too many things going on. So what I do is I do that. I narrow to what's most vital and essential. And I would say that you could take it by sign. That would be one way to do it. Although Rob Resnick does a much better job of it than I could. But I would say that I would rather do it this way. People who resonate with the earth element are being challenged to take their mental egoic karmic structures and loosen them and even renounce them if they're getting locked into them. And so it's an earth element kind of deconstruction cycle, and it's very prominent in everybody's experience. Mm-hmm. If people resonate with the water element, what's happening there is that we are being asked to remember further about why we came here and what we're doing here and what comes next, because essentially people have been succumbing to a collective disease called amnesia, collective amnesia, where people just don't remember much of anything. And we don't need to remember specific details and historical facts. We need to remember the essence of who we are and why we're here. And it's a water crisis, really, to sort of swim back to the source, in essence.
And water is memory. Water holds memory.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the air element, which to me is about the future. In the air element, what's happening is we're being given these quickenings, these inner experiences, these extraordinary openings, these possibilities everywhere. Some people are just overwhelmed by it. And there's a sense of an expanding field and of greater possibilities and of the need to be able to be sort of centered and focused and discerning in the midst of a very multiple expanding field all the time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then in the realm of fire, my personal favorite, I would say it's a question of individual presence. It's a question of becoming genuinely present to oneself and to the Christ within one, as in the Christ letters. And that feeling is so sacred and powerful, and it allows you to cut right through the egoic side of fire to where you are on fire with the whole, and the whole is streaming through you, and you come forth. And so that's the fire principle, and there are further elements as well, but I won't go into those. And I would say basically that everybody's being asked to sort of take the next leap and to pick up strands that maybe they had left behind at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Has anybody ever told you sound a little like Terence McKenna?
Well, one time I was, I've met him 3 or 4 times, but the first time I met him, I was, there was a local, I lived in Santa Cruz, California for a long time, and there was a local radio station with the college, the university there, that I was appearing on with this woman, and just before me, the guest was Terence McKenna, so I was there for maybe 10 minutes in the other room listening to him. I only slightly knew who he was, and there he was, and then we met, and I felt like, boy, I could have become him or him me if I'd taken that much acid or whatever, or mushrooms in his case. It just felt very resonant, and at the same time, when I finally heard him give a talk in Santa Cruz also to, as he called it, preaching to the choir, I felt like, God, this man is completely out there. I mean, he's really out there. And at that point, I wasn't so far out there, but I've kind of gone further in that direction, especially in one respect, which is that my critique of the existing situation has gotten pretty intense because I realized that it's so hard to get a readout on the times because we sort of get in our own way, and I've been learning how to get out of my own way. And so I feature more of that kind of cutting-edge, sharp commentary aspect. I used to want to not do that. But, yeah, I guess I'm more like him than ever.
Has having children pushed you towards the cutting-edge, sharp commentary?
Yes, it does, especially because these children, I should probably invoke them slightly. These children, these 4 Gaia children, are they're very, very different from other children that we interact with. I'm still hoping to meet others. I'm sure we will sometime. But so far, they're different. They are vividly present. They're incredibly feeling. They're completely into the earth, and they don't have a lot of filters on them. They're growing up wild. We're crazy parents. So what's happening is that they're always pushing my edge, although they're very polite and kind to me. They have to be. I'm so old. But essentially, they are pushing me just by who they are and what they go through. And they're all expanding and moving all the time, and they do not like certain aspects of what the world has become in previous generations, particularly the fakery. They just can't stand how everything's so fake.
Mm-hmm. Are they Pluto and Sag kids?
All of them were born between 2001 and 2008. But the 3 boys were born between 2001 and 5, and then Savitri came along in 2008. So it's, but she does have Pluto in Sag too. Yes.
So Pluto and Sag just do not have a propensity at all for accepting lies and illusions. This is one trait that I think we'll see in them, which could be a very sterling trait for the future of the planet, to be honest with you.
Yeah, on a steady daily basis, it is very difficult because it means that you have to learn how to live with yourself in a way where you can't get away from yourself at all. And most people associate parenting with getting away from yourself and playing roles and games, but it's not like that around here. There's no getting away from anything. So yeah, it's very revealing and awakening. Most of all, it's a love thing. These kids are very affectionate. Mm-hmm. And they just want to be in this love energy all the time. And when you're older and you're in a love energy all the time, it's tremendously consoling and liberating.
Yeah. I've actually noticed that about my son. He's 9. He's a Pluto and Sag kid, Pisces, and he that's where he wants to be. He wants to be in that love energy. He wants to be able to emote and be close. And I think that hopefully that this is going to be something that's going to be transgenerational for them.
Yes, I think we need a lot of deep feeling to correct for our shallow mentality.
Yeah. So there's a request here from the Peanut Gallery in the chat room. They want to know what your signs are, Ellias.
Well, let's see. My moon sign is Sagittarius, late Sagittarius. Mm-hmm. And my rising sign, or in-breath signature, as I call it, is middle to late Virgo. Mm-hmm. And my sun sign is middle of Taurus. Middle of Taurus.
This has been a Taurus week for me. Hooked up with Jay Widener in Colorado. He's a Taurus. So your moon is probably conjunct my Jupiter, which is probably why we get on.
Yeah, I've noticed that when people have in their charts moon conjunct Jupiter in Sag, they have this, like an individual chart, they have this quality where they're always pursuing their own dream. And I think that that's what the language you and I are speaking together is, pursuing one's own dream.
Mm-hmm. My Jupiter is at 25, Sag. So.
Yeah, my moon's at 28.
Oh, there we
27
go.
plus.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Ellias, excuse me, it's been a real gift to have you back on, and certainly very synchronistic and kismetic, just popping into that mailbox and finding Julia's message to me from back in time, back in April. So it's been great to reconnect with you, and a real blessing at the same time. So I want to thank you for doing that and making time, getting up real early. And I know you're busy and you've got your children. So again, much thanks and gratitude.
Yeah, my gratitude to you. It's wonderful to talk in this way, and I'm glad that everybody is gathering together in this way.
Well, if you want to gather with Ellias offline, you can do that at stargenesis.com, and you can access
Stargenesis Wisdom.
Stargenesis Wisdom. My apologies. Stargenesiswisdom.com, and you can. That link is on the show page, by the way. And you can also access all of his books through Amazon. Some of them are Kindle ready, and obviously we had somebody from the chat room download one in real time, and you can get them there as well. Only 5 copies, though, up here on the Inside Degrees on Amazon. So if you're interested in that, you probably want to go over there and grab one right now. It's a hard book to find, but worth hunting down. Okay, Elias, until next time, my friend, you take very good care.
Yes, you too. Much love to you and all of your circle there.
Okay. All right. That's our friend from Hawaii, Ellias Lonsdale. And with that, we've reached the end of the show. It's been an amazing 2 hours. We started off here on planet Earth, hanging out with Bunny Herring and listening to her fascinating story about being a rider, a bareback rider with horses and elephants and Ringling Brothers, and her very interesting love affairs with Holocaust camp, for lack of a better term, women who serviced the SS, and a sad clown who died, to marrying a cowboy from Wyoming, and working now with young women in prison and having a strong relationship with an ex-convict. And from there, we went to Ellias Lonsdale, and his interdimensional musings on the current state of the stars and planet Earth, and bring us all the way back to center, right here, right now, terra firma, me and you. So that's it. I'll see you all on Monday, and we'll be taking part in the mashup as usual. Next Friday, Neil Kramer. Don't miss the show, and I might have another extra special guest to go along with it. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to save what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Friday Farcast. Here's Philip K. Dick.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. we would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.